The other day I'm on YouTube and I'm just scrolling through videos on my homepage, and there's this one organizational video by a friend of mine. I'm watching it and he's talking about how he's organizing embossing powders, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, I have tried just about every single thing out there, and I've yet to actually come across the most perfect system, and his system just blew my mind. It was simple. How did I not think of this? Hey chickies, welcome. If you're new here, I'm Ingrid. It's a Saturday afternoon and I sit down to get a little creative. I have an idea for a project that I'm working on, and halfway through I decide that I want to add some embossing powder. This is not a freak occurrence. This happens to me all the time. Mid-project, I have to make a decision on what I'm going to use. Now, if I only have one or two things in my stash, no big deal. The choices are quick. I can move along very easily. But when you've been embossing for 20 years, you kind of amassed a stash. And that means that I have 5 or 6 kinds of gold. I have 4 blacks. You know what I mean? I have so many different choices, and choices are a good thing. And today is very different than when I started 20 years ago. Back then, there were just the regular embossing powders. But now there are blends, there's all this other great stuff. So you really kind of need a way to organize that, or the chaos really gets the better of you. Now, I've done different things. I've used the clickable lids. I've stored my embossing powders in a drawer upside down so that I could look through the part that doesn't have any labeling on it and see the actual powder itself. The problem with that is the same problem that I actually run into when I'm actually creating. I stop what I'm doing. I actually go to my stash, I rummage through it to get just the right powder. I kind of have an idea in my head of what I want it to look like. So I pick a powder and I apply it to my project, only to find out it's nothing like I wanted it to look like. And that stops me in my tracks, because then I have to make a decision. Do I want to keep going? Is this going to work? Can I make it work? Can I live with it? Or do I have to start over? And I never want to have to start over. I really usually try to make it work, but chances are I'm not going to be 100% happy with it in the end. I have such a big stash that when I go rummaging through it, sometimes it's hard to find the right one. They all have different looks, but when they're in the jar, it doesn't always look what it looks like when it's melted, because it's in a dry state. Now, you can combat that with a swatch book. That's something that I've done a long time ago. Here I'm showing you one by my friend Beard and Hovey. She's made this killer swatch book. But the reason that this doesn't work for me personally is I have too many. You know, I have more than 70 powders, and I just keep adding to my stash. And you might think that that's overkill, but I actually use a lot of them. I end up spending a lot of time picking this out. And the one thing that I've realized over the years, the more time I spend mid-project picking out supplies, that for me is a creativity killer. It completely stops everything. And sometimes I will actually get up and walk away because it's just too much. I've moved on. And I don't ever get back into that flow, those creative juices that were just kind of moving and creating something. I need a better system. Thankfully, the other day when I was looking, I came across this video by Simon Hurley. Now, is he the one that put this into place? Probably not. You know, I'm sure that somebody did this 20 years ago. I wouldn't be surprised, but it's the first time I ever saw it. Simon had several different organizational hacks that were interesting, but this one around embossing powders, to me, a light bulb went off and I thought, wow, this is brilliant. I cannot believe how easy this is. I've got to do this to my stash. Along those lines, did you know that this video is even a part of an organizational hop? All the details are in the section below. When you're done with the video, be sure to check out all the other stops, because you might pick up some golden tips like I did from Simon's video. I did make this little tweak though. If you've watched these videos before, you know that I am accident prone. So he does a lot of holding with his fingers, and I had to add a little bit of a tweak to this because honestly, it's an accident waiting to happen for me. I will end up burning myself. Here's the basic premise. You're gonna take the lid of your powder and you're gonna smush it into your embossing pad. Now that's gonna give you a really nice coating onto the actual lid. Then you take your lid and you're gonna take some reverse tweezers, because this is where you can hold this away from you. You wanna make sure that your heat tool is preheated. That's really important here, especially when you're working with things like glitter or different textures. You know, sometimes when you're working with wow powders, they give you lots of different texture options, and that's a great thing because it gives you a different look to your powders. And then you're going to actually pour your powder over. Now, Simon does something where he smushes it into the actual powder. I chose not to do that, and here's why. That's not how I apply my powders to my project. If I smush something into a powder, it's gonna pick it up differently than if you were to pour over it. Now, with some of them that have some of those larger textures, I needed to do this a second time to get a really good idea of what that looked like, and that's okay. You can do that. You want to have a good representation of what the powder looks like melted. Do you kind of see where this is going? You're going to see it dry in the jar, and you're going to have a melted version on the lid. The other tip that I can offer you when you're doing this is you want to make sure to start with your heat tool further away, especially with larger granules and glitter. There's just a little too much force from an embossing gun, so when you have it too close to your actual material, you'll see those little pieces just kind of fly away. Let me tell you exactly what this has done for me. I always know exactly what it's going to look like, and I can, at a moment's glance, look at my stash and grab the right one. That is a total game changer for me, because I'm not going to waste time. I know what I'm looking for, I see it, I can quickly grab it and add it to my project. And there's not going to be any surprises. It is pretty to look at, I won't lie. I do like seeing that. We've been talking about organizational hacks. What about crafty hacks? I've got some really great crafty hacks that do save me a lot of time and actually take care of some really big problems that I come across when crafting. I've got that video right here, and I also have a playlist on embossing powders right below it. I'll see you in one of those two videos.